right. Welcome everybody. This is awesome. Okay, so to start off, my name is John Fenley, and I am the co-founder and community outreach coordinator of Spark Community Center. And I have the distinct honor of welcoming you all to this very special Spark Live event. We are all here today to learn and to broaden our horizons and see community in a new light. Like me, I'm sure you are hoping to draw upon the great wisdom and intellect of Dr. Grandin, and maybe even gain valuable insights from our panelists today. Our panelists are made up of members and participants of Spark Community Center. But before we do, I want to tell you about the values and the mission of Spark Community Center. Don't worry, I'll be quick. I came up with the name because I believe that everyone has a spark worth sharing. I know I'm a cheesy sentimentalist. But what I meant by that is everyone has a passion or a talent that should be shared with the world. Everyone has a purpose and the potential to achieve greatness. Just look at Dr. Grandin. Her spark shines bright for all of us to see. But when you have a disability, the system tends to treat you like a patient. Are your health needs being met? Are you receiving the support you need to perform well at work? If you answer yes, then Medicaid can check off the box and say that you're living a full life. But are you? At Spark Community Center, we believe that having social ties to your community through fun activities and educational classes is, I don't know, just so vital. We believe that you benefit when you have friends that cheer you on in the good times and offer a shoulder to cry on in bad times. Everyone should have a support network. Honestly, when I dreamt of a place where you could join friends for art, music, science, cooking, gardening, and more, I never knew that it would evolve into a family. And the pandemic, it really challenged our family. Suddenly, togetherness and community were danger words, you know, and we had to close our doors like many businesses. But we couldn't allow our participants to become even more isolated. So we transitioned to a model of online classes that continues to keep us all connected. I want to thank those of you who've just joined us today, who purchased a ticket to support Spark, and I invite you to look us up online. With any luck, when it's safe for us to reopen in our new location, we'll see you at future classes or events. We're always looking for motivated volunteers. Wink, wink. So I just want to go over kind of the way that we're structuring this event tonight before I hand it off to my friend and colleague, Mary Hedges. And basically, I've welcomed you, so welcome. I'm going to hand it off to Mary, who will introduce you to our amazing guest speaker. And then we will give the time to Dr. Grandin to wow us all. And we'll leave room for questioning at the end from our Spark participants and our panelists. And then if there's more time allowed, we will allow maybe for some of you to write in some questions of your own. So without further ado, let's get this party started. I hand it off to Mary Hedges. Mary.
Thank you, John. Hi, guys, and welcome, Dr. Grandin. I feel so blessed and honored to have you here with us. For those of you who aren't familiar with who she is a scientist, an activist, an author, a spearhead for better, more humane treatment of cattle. An amazing human being, in my opinion. I'm definitely awestruck at the fact that you would honor us, and I'm so appreciative, Dr. Grandin. She works at the... Yes, Seiji. Sorry, guys. She works at the Colorado State University currently. She does a ton with animals and animal behavior. She has written a ton of books and papers, and more than anything, she is an autism spokesperson. And I know that that is something that is very close to heart for a lot of you. So without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to Dr. Grandin, and thank you yet again for joining us.
Well, it's really good to be here, and I think I'll do a pretty short presentation, open it up for questions. Anybody wants to put questions in the chat, go ahead and do that. That will be just fine. I'm a professor of animal science at Colorado State University here in Fort Collins. And when I was a little kid, when I was 3 years old, I had no speech. I was very lucky to get into a really good speech therapy. I can't emphasize enough how important early education is. But another thing that's really important is developing a person's strengths. When I was about 7 and 8 years old, I was really good at art. And my mother always encouraged my art. And she encouraged me to do lots of different kinds of art. I would just draw the same horse head over and over again. And doing art, that became the basis of my career in designing livestock handling facilities. It's really important to find something that you can be really, really good at. In fact, I can show you some of my drawings. There's some of my drawings for livestock facilities right there. And when I showed off my work, people liked it. So find something that you're good at doing. That's really important. And I totally agree with John's comment that there's more to life than just your medical stuff. And I think one of the big problems is all the labels and the whole medical model. It's there's way too much of that. Because the thing you've got about autism goes from the people who make Zoom, because I've been out to the tech companies, to somebody who can't dress themselves. And it all has the same label. Einstein probably had some autistic traits. Thomas Edison, even Michelangelo. And when I was out working on big construction projects for large beef companies, I worked with skilled tradespeople and with really brilliant designers, machinery designers. They were either autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD. About 20% of the people I worked with would be special ed kids today. And this is something I am very concerned about because industry needs these kids. Right now, we had a whole bunch of equipment break in one of our big plants and stuff that should not break. This just happened. And you need people to fix these things. And visual thinkers like me tend to be very good at visual thinking. I think in pictures. That's how the movie showed me how I think. There's other people on the spectrum very good at math. They do the programming. Other people are good with words. But I'm seeing too many smart individuals sort of ending up in the basement playing video games on a disability check when they ought to be out doing things. And one of the things that's so difficult with the autism label is that it's so variable from somebody that has, nonverbal plus epilepsy plus other serious regular medical issues to somebody who's running a great big company that does, metal fabrication. I know a guy who owns a food factory that he invented. He's in his 70s. He has a private jet. We discussed for half an hour what labels he would have been. He would have been autistic, dyslexic, oppositional defiant, you name it, this guy was it. He was it. I call him Willy Wonka's stainless steel food factory. Can't tell you where Willy Wonka's factory is. His jet took me there, but he's total special ed kid. He's 70 years old. And this is something I find very frustrating as I go back and forth between the livestock world. I know people that raise cattle that are probably autistic, people that train horses that may be autistic. Most of them are older people, and juniors getting addicted to video games instead of getting out and doing things. And as a visual thinker, I do not get locked into the labels. I go, this 10-year-old that's talking about his autism, I saw the adult version of that 10-year-old when I went and visited a tech company. Been to Apple, Google, Amazon. Microsoft, I've been there. I've been to all the different companies. You just sit in their dining room and watch the programmers come in and spot the ones that are on the spectrum. They are there. This is something I find frustrating. And then you have people that do not have those kinds of skills. But let's find something that they're good at, something that they enjoy doing. I like what Stephen Hawking has to say about disability. Right before he died, Stephen Hawking had an interview with the New York Times. And you know who Stephen Hawking is? He's the famous scientist, the physicist that just, that learned all about black holes. He said, concentrate on the things your disability does not prevent you from doing well. Dr. Hawking could only do one thing well. He could do mathematics in his head. It's the only thing he could do well, but he did it super well. Mathematics in his head. Yep, he couldn't talk. He had couldn't write except with an electronic device, very difficult. But he did a lot of things. Figure out something that you can do really well. Too often, there's too much emphasis on the disability. Algebra, I'm never going to learn it. I'm concerned that for a lot of visual thinkers like me, algebra is screening them out of becoming a welder or becoming a car mechanic. You don't need algebra for that. Yeah, if you're going to calculate the trip to Mars, well, if you want to see something cool, look up the Perseverance Mars landing. Look that up. Super cool. Super cool. So the mathematician gets a spaceship to Mars. But when you look at that lander, look at the wheels. Somebody in a shop made those wheels. And oftentimes, that person in the shop doesn't get enough respect. That's a one-of-a-kind machine. Every part. Somebody, there's a bunch of different shops, made that all in bits and pieces. Very carefully, very, very skilled. And there's probably people in there on the spectrum that made some of those parts. Every part is essential. If one part fails, it's not going to work. You see, that's an example of you need both the mathematical minds, but you also need the visual thinkers to actually build all those parts for the Mars rover and do some of the design work on it too. I kind of like to geek out. That's why I've got the Hubble Space Telescope poster up there, and I got this new, Cheryl just gave me this new Star Trek Atlas. That's pretty cool, so I thought I'd put that there. And I like to geek out on things like that. And the other big thing I'm seeing is students are not learning work skills, not learning job skills. That's the other big problem. And the other thing I'm seeing when they do get them jobs is, okay, let's say somebody gets a job bagging groceries at the grocery store. The problem is they don't differentiate between the person where that may be an appropriate career from the person where that's a step to something else. Again, we get locked into the labels. The visual thinkers don't get locked into the labels. I go, well, let's see what this person can do. And some of the individuals that are nonverbal, they can do a lot more than what you think they can do. There's nonverbal people who type completely independently with nobody touching them. And they describe a sensory disordered world, visual system. They may be seeing kind of scrambled images, like when the satellite TV goes completely bad type of images, because the circuits in the back of the brain that the eye's like a camera, but then there's like neurons back here that process the images. Doesn't work right, and it's scrambling the image. And they describe problems with not being able to control movement is another thing they describe. And some very good books by nonverbals. There's Tito Mukhopadhyay, How Can I Talk If My Lips Don't Move? These people are completely independent. Nobody's touching them. And there's the book, The Reason I Jump. It's a New York Times bestseller, but it has a sequel. The sequel's better. The sequel to that book is something like Fall Down 5 times, Get Up 6 times, because he's older and he has more insight. And then there's a book coming out this summer This is coming out this summer. I got a review copy of it. I've Been Buried Under Years of Dust is coming out this summer. Another person, completely nonverbal, types independently. Not everybody can do it, but there are some that can do that. And one of the simplest things to have them type on is simply a tablet, using a tablet. And the reason why that works better is because when you type on that electronic keyboard, the print appears right next to the keyboard. There's no attention shift. With this computer here, if I look down at this key here, I got to look way up like that to see it on the screen. That doesn't work. Tablet. And years ago, there was a teacher who took the regular keyboard of the computer and she put it up on a box like this so that when the person typed, the print appeared right there on the screen next to the keyboard. So that's something you could even try with a desktop. But the simplest is a tablet. Text messaging program, that'll work just fine. The phones are too small. And some of them can, they got a good brain in there. But the problem is they can't control the movements. And if anybody's working with a totally nonverbals, those books are must-reads. My favorite is Tito Bacapatahe, How Can I Talk If My Lips Don't Move? I had a chance to meet him, and I know that that nobody's touching him or cueing him. I met him in a library, and his mom said, I want to have him tell you about autism. I go, nope, I'm going to have him tell me about something that he or you doesn't know about.
Come on as a participant. Oh, darn.
And I found an old Scientific American magazine that was like 10 years old, and it had an advertisement, some tech company, and it had a picture of an astronaut in a spacesuit sitting on a horse in the desert. And I showed him this picture, and I said, tell me about this picture. And he types Apollo 11 on a horse. And then he gets up and flaps around. There's no way that could be cued. I hadn't seen that picture ever before. He hadn't seen it, and his mom certainly hadn't seen it. That's why I picked it. Because it was in an old magazine that I just pulled out. There's no way that was cued. Okay, well, let's just open it up for a bunch of questions now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Temple. I love your insights, and I loved your drawings. I had no idea you're such an amazing artist.
Well, that's I can show you some other pictures of some of my facilities here. They're in my book, Thinking in Pictures. There's the drawings. And here's some of my my livestock handling facilities. I got one there. I call it my ground sculpture.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love that you're a visual thinker, because I'm the same. I need to see what I'm, get my hands on the item and really think about it visually myself.
Well, everything I think about is a picture. And when I was young, I thought everybody thought in pictures. I didn't know they thought differently.
Oh, wow.
And I was shocked when I have a little question and ask people to find out how they think. If you say to me, think about a church steeple, I'll see specific ones, and I start naming them off where they're at. Because I'll see them like a series of PowerPoint slides. But it was an absolute shock to me when I was like in my late 30s. I mean, I was an adult. Yeah. All through my 20s, I thought everybody thought in pictures. And I asked a speech therapist, think about a church steeple, and that is all she saw. Just two lines like this. That's all she saw. That was a shock to me.
Wow.
And then there's some people that have no visual thinking at all. They have a condition called aphantasia. And sometimes they're good at math. They have no visual thinking.
Yeah.
So you have all these, and there's actually research that I've discussed in the autistic brain about the different kinds of thinking. Mathematical, visual, spatial, and object visualizers like me.
Well, I'm definitely not a mathematician myself. I'm actually kind of a resident artist at Spark. And when I created Spark Community Center, I went ahead and drew. I'm a bit of a cartoonist, so I drew up the logo and little mascot, Sparky the Spark Plug, and he's kind of on all of our announcements and flyers, and you know, it brings me joy, and that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. You know, don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do.
Well, that's what I really liked what Stephen Hawking had to say. Concentrate on the things. Your disability does not prevent you from doing well. And that was in an interview with Stephen Hawking shortly before he died in the New York Times.
Wow, I love that. I love that quote.
And when he died, he could only do one thing well. He could do math in his head. Now his recreation is NASA took him out and took him in the weightless plane. And you can find that picture online. And he's got a blue NASA flight suit on, and he's floating weightless, and he's so happy he could do that.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
Yeah, that was very cool. And that picture's of it's a NASA photo. It's easy to find online.
Yeah, it's exciting to see the progress they're making in space. I geek out about that too. So I think I got that from my mom. She got to see the big launch and everything, and she's like, "Oh, there's going to be another launch." And so the recent launch of the drone that they sent to Mars is pretty cool.
Well, I can't believe they got a little drone that they're going to fly around.
Yeah.
To take pictures.
Yeah, that's going to be amazing.
Well, I can remember the moon landing. That's my generation's big thing.
Very cool.
And I've talked to retired NASA space scientists that find out they had autism when the kids got diagnosed. And I am seeing this all the time when I talk about this. I'll be with you in just a minute. Granddads coming up to me, and they're finding out that they're autistic when the kids are diagnosed. And they had decent jobs, like computer programmer, that'd be a young one, accountant. Okay, Isaiah Armstrong, you had your hand raised?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Nisa.
Okay,
So
well then the names are wrong on the showing up the wrong name.
Sure. But Nisa, go ahead if you have a question.
Yeah, sorry, I was calling you Armstrong and the name's not right.
All right. I like you, but I have the same thing you have.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
What was that, Nisa? You said that you feel that you deal with the same things that.
See, I like
you. I do art.
Oh, she likes your art, and she does the same thing you do with art.
Well, good. Well, that's good.
I do music.
Yeah, Nisa's an amazing artist. She's shown us some of her work, and it looks like almost like
Do you have
stained
any
glass.
of your work you could hold up and show?
Yeah.
Why don't you get some of your work and hold it up and show it?
They don't have it with you.
I don't have with me.
Oh, you don't have it with you? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Well, then another thing you can do is get it on and have it on your phone, and then you could show it on your phone and hold that up. That works too.
Well, we got something on our phone that we found that is actually related to what you were telling us about with Stephen Hawking. We have a picture of him in space.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, that's the picture. That's the picture right there. That's actually in an airplane that flies it's a regular passenger jet with all the seats taken out.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And they fly it like this.
Oh, cool.
Yep. And then when they get up in the parabola, then you have about 20 seconds of weightlessness.
That's amazing.
It's a regular airplane that they do it in.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's all padded inside. And some people get sick to their stomach, so they call that plane the vomit comet. Because they'll do a whole bunch of it like this.
Yeah.
And, like the fifth time.
It's the G-forces probably that they get.
Not the G-forces, it's disorienting your balance system.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, the best way to not have that happen is to pick out some spot that you can lock your eyes on. Like maybe there's a sign or something in there that you can just fixate on. That would help you not to get sick.
Yeah.
Because it's the centrifugal force, that inner ear.
Well,
It's no centrifugal.
John, do you have a couple more questions? I see that people are starting to put their hands up. I think we're going to wait.
Now I can't. I can only see the people here on this. Let me see. We got other people. Okay, let me do a lot of.
John, did you have a couple more questions before we open it up to the rest of the?
Oh, now Sterling Roberts up here has a hand up if the name is correct.
Oh, Sterling. Yeah, we should hear from Sterling.
He needs to unmute his mic.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, just so you know, that is actually correct. Sterling is correct for my name, but here's my question.
Slow down.
How do you get your mind to quiet down so you can fall asleep at night?
I sometimes have some problems with that. One of the things that really helps is vigorous exercise. I do 100 sit-ups every night. Makes it.
Oh.
And I actually heard that in the video. On YouTube.
Tell her.
Yeah, and it took me like 3 months to work up to that. That did not happen overnight. I want to definitely warn you.
Yeah.
But
I actually watched one of your videos on YouTube actually today.
Okay.
The one where you're at. It was like 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So just letting you know that.
But another thing that will help is get off of the electronics like a couple of hours before bedtime. That helps too.
Yeah. Sometimes I just close my eyes. It makes me fall asleep kind of quick.
Good. Well, that's good if it does. That's good.
Thank you.
That's
all the questions, and my mom has some.
Oh, no, those are notes I was taking for books for mommy to read.
Oh, yeah. You said no. You said
Sterling, can I ask you what made you want to join the event tonight and the call tonight?
So can I help with that a little?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we watched the movie about Dr. Grandin, and that was a big moment, a big connection moment for Sterling and for our son.
So actually one night at dinner, we were all sitting down and eating, and I actually just for some reason just felt saying, "Do I have autism?" I just said that for no reason.
Well, don't let autism define you. It's not your primary identity. For me, as being a scientist and a university professor, that's my primary identity. I mean, autism is an important part of who I am, but being a scientist, that comes first. I'm seeing too many kids your age aren't learning things like shopping and handling money and things like this, not learning enough basic skills. If people want to write things in the chat, that's fine too, because I've got that open.
Yeah, well, I had developed a few questions in case we had lulls with the board at Spark, and one of them is kind of based on something that you talk about often, which is different kinds of thinking. Can you tell us more about what that means? What do you mean by different kinds of thinking?
Well, the first kind of thinking is a visual thinker like me. And the HBO movie shows how I think in pictures. So when I ask the question about the church steeples, they come up in my mind, and they're specific.
Yeah.
Like I say, the one that's over on, by the high school, it's the church by the high school. It's specific. And then you have the mathematical thinker. That'd be the second type. And that's the visual spatial. And the correct scientific names for these thinking is object visualizer for me and visual spatial for the mathematician. And if you use those terms when you search on Google Scholar, you'll find papers. If you do not use those terms, you'll not find the papers. And then you have the word thinker, who thinks completely in words. Now, the thing that's interesting is these different thinkers can have complementary skills. Let's take something like the iPhone, for example. Steve Jobs was an artist, and he developed the easy-to-use interface. The more mathematical minds had to make the programming work inside the phone. And there's a lot of platforms out there right now for using online, and the reason why Zoom has all the business is because we don't have to learn how to use it. And then you go on some other dreadful platform they want me to be on. They want to give me a 45-minute thing on how to use some awful piece of software. And I'm just saying, why don't you just use Zoom? Because I don't really want to learn how to use this platform because it's not nice. and that's the reason why Zoom took over.
Yeah.
In fact, the Zoom guy used to work for WebEx. I'm not a fan of WebEx. I've had some real messed up webinars on them.
Yeah.
So he quit and he started Zoom.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah,
it's and people are using it because it's easy to use.
Right. Well, thank you. I think I like the idea that, just because we're different thinkers doesn't mean that we're flawed. It means that we have a different insight on how to.
We need all the different kinds of minds.
Yep.
This mess in Texas with all this power equipment breaking, you had like 4 different types of power generation equipment, and it all froze.
That's insane. Yeah.
I mean, that's a coal-fired power plant froze. We have one of those here in Fort Collins, and it hasn't frozen. They didn't winterize this stuff.
Well, I
need some visual thinkers to prevent some of the stuff from happening.
I got a whole feed of questions here.
Okay.
For you, so we might as well start tackling them. Let's see.
And then I've got some questions on the chat board too that I could.
I got one.
Yeah, oh yeah, Kathy.
Okay.
I have to ask it because it's easier than typing. Were you happy with the way they portrayed you in the movie?
I thought they did a very good job in the movie.
I did, but I was just wondering what you thought.
Oh, well, they did a great job showing my visual thinking. Claire Danes sort of became me. She was a very good actress, and they showed all my projects accurately. My science teacher and my mother and my aunt were shown really nicely. I thought they did a really good job on the movie.
That's fantastic.
One more question. Do you ever feel bad for your cows? I always felt bad for your cows.
Well, they one of the things when people ask about, how we treat livestock, people forget nature can be really harsh.
Yeah.
Weather event that, kills a bunch of animals or a predator gets them. People forget that.
Sarah Grease, do you have a question?
I do have a question, actually. I read your books in school, and I did a book report on them, and I like the books you wrote.
Okay.
I think you did a good job. I like your books you wrote. I always wanted to meet you, so I'm glad to meet you tonight. I'm glad I get to meet you.
Well, the whole thing, Valerie Jensen here wrote about vocational schools, taking out the shop classes and the cooking and the sewing and a theater and all that stuff like that. More schools have kept that. Worst thing we ever did. And I want to make it very clear that the vocational school is not for everybody. But a lot of the visual thinkers like me, it's a good place to go. And now when I'm seeing some of the problems we're having now, we're having to import entire poultry processing plants from Holland because we don't make the equipment anymore. We used to make this stuff. But a lot of the people that I work with have retired. And it's those visual thinkers that can't do algebra getting screened out. But on the other hand, it's not for everybody. The verbal thinkers, no. The trades are not for them. Did
you get picked on in school?
Well, they're not interested in building things. But we've got kids today never grow up using tools. We've got, they're not getting exposed to enough stuff. I got interested in the cattle industry because I got exposed to it when I was 15.
That's great.
And exposed to it, I wouldn't have ended up in the cattle industry. Another reason why I ended up in the cattle industry rather than the space industry is I couldn't do the math. So I got to do engineering without the math. And you look at, but you still need the visual thinkers. And go look at that Mars rover, look at the wheels. Somebody made those. They didn't just come out of nothing. Somebody made them.
I love that.
Very carefully.
Well, I know you say you weren't able to make it into the space industry because you didn't have that math thinking brain. But one day, you never know. Maybe they're going to want to consult with you on how to create a cattle farm on Mars or something.
Well, no, but I talked to a lady who's designed stuff for the space station because you do need visual thinking. And she was a waitress at a coffee shop outside of Cape Canaveral, whichever name you want to use for it. And she got to talking to this massive space scientist, and they took her out and she solved some problems for him. Because there's, the visual thinking is also needed in design.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something that you need. And when decisions were made, like in Texas, not to winterize equipment, now some of it's difficult, like the gas-fired power plant, the actual wellheads on the wells were freezing. That's hard to fix. But a coal-fired plant froze? Okay, that's a fairly big node on the network. I'm going to fix that one. But you see, I see it. We have a coal-fired power plant here, and I know they're dirty. But ours is, it keeps working. They dump a horrible amount of coal in it. I've been over there. I've watched them dump the coal in there. But that particular plant is the easy one to winterize.
Yeah, that's true.
So I at least winterized that one. And then the wind power got iced up because they didn't buy the winterized versions.
Yeah.
That's only about 20% of the power. And then there was a nuclear power plant that got the thing for the steam turbine got frozen. That's easy to fix.
Yeah, I'd say it's a hot mess down there in Texas, but
it's a really big mess. But you see, and looking at, as I start to talk about this, I'm going, like, as soon as I read in the paper that the wells were freezing at the wellhead. In other words, you got many gas wells feeding into the system. That's an expensive mess to fix. Yeah. That's not just the pipe going into the plant that froze. That's easy to fix.
We have another question from I don't want to mispronounce the name, but Kyle, is it Mopin? He writes, farmed animal sanctuaries are becoming more popular across the country, which primarily focus on promoting animal protection and rights over the standards of animal welfare. What are your thoughts on such sanctuaries?
Well, I mean, I've designed slaughterhouses, and some people think that's really bad. And I've done a lot of thinking about the place for grazing animals on the land. The best farmland we have in the world is in Iowa and Illinois. I lived there for 10 years when I was getting my PhD. And bison created that land. We need to be getting the grazing animals, the sheep, the goats, and the cattle back on the land as part of a crop rotation. They'll improve the land. They're part of the land. I mean, animals have their place, and I have a lot of concerns about welfare. And I'm going to bash pets just as bad as I'm going to bash cattle right now, or horses. We select a bulldog with such a flat face it can't breathe. I have problems with that. I got big problems with that.
Yeah, I do too.
And we're riding horses way too young and hurting their bones. I think it's fine to ride horses, but not little baby ones. Give them a chance to grow. Well, nobody's riding colts, but I say baby ones, under 2 years of age, and they're riding them really hard. They're just too young. And there's, that's very bad for the animal's welfare. And there's some dogs that don't have a very good life. They're locked up in a crate all day.
Yeah.
We've got to give animals a life worth living. That I feel very strongly about. And right now, before COVID, I was going over the meat plants all the time. Well, now, since I'm 73, I haven't been. I'll be back. Allowed back in after this shot. Second shot takes full effect in another 10 days.
Yeah.
That the biggest problems I would see is you have some lame cattle come in. It's the way they handle them back at the feed yard. It wasn't something that the plant did. I have problems with with animals with sore feet. I got problems with that. Now, they've got to have a life worth living. Now, beef cattle, when you raise them right, sheep, when you raise them right, they have a life worth living. If you raise them right. No, there's things that have to be changed. this is where I have to agree to disagree. I'm not going to be a vegan. First of all, I can't function on a vegan diet. I simply cannot function. I've tried it. I have to have animal protein, and it's genetic. And my mother's the same way. She's got to have, especially in the morning, have some animal protein.
Yep. That's how it is in Europe.
We have another question from our panel this time. Kai, we saw that your hand was up. Do you have a question?
Let's get some water here.
We can have you unmute yourself. And yes, help yourself to some water, Dr. Grandin. We're asking a lot of you tonight.
Right.
There you go, Kai.
Hello.
All right, you have to ask a question.
My question is for you, Dr. Grandin, is what most hard thing about COVID-19 rules?
Okay, let's discuss that. The thing that helped me the most, COVID, was to get up every morning, take a shower, dressed for work by 7:30. Every single morning. It makes a difference. I've been doing that. And then I had to make a big change and get on Zoom. Fortunately, I have a very, very good computer person to help me with the tech because I'm not that good with tech. And he bought the last equipment available in Fort Collins. Best Buy got bought out like that. Every professor was over there getting the stuff. And he found stuff for me that Best Buy didn't even know they had. And then they went in the storeroom and found it. But it's being on a schedule. In fact, this is what they learned on the space station. So I suggest the kids look up life on the International Space Station. Get them up in the morning. They have their work they have to do in the morning, maintenance and their scientific experiments. Midday meal, they all eat together. Then they have to exercise. And then they have time for fun. Watch a movie. In the Russian part of the space station, they've got a phone that they can call cell phones on the ground. They like to have fun with that.
That's great.
Because they learned that they have to have some time off. They had to have time just to chill out, do whatever they wanted, talk to their families. Even they'll get books. They're getting more supply ships now. They're so happy. They're getting a bunch of apples on the next supply ship. Things like that matter.
Yeah.
Kind environment. The other thing I did was I had a new book project that we're working on. And we're now in the editing stage. The rough drafts are done. I had to have projects to do. Had to. Have to find something else to do. And out here in the summertime, everybody was tubing on the river. Now the ski resorts are jammed, the lodges are closed, and they're hanging out in their cars, they use their cars for lodges.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they got COVID spread around up there. Some kids don't want to wear masks. Give them choices. You get to pick it out. Now, we have a kind of a mask. I like there's a kind of a jersey cloth. It's real soft. You have to wear one, but there's a lot of choices.
Yeah.
I just talked to a mom just a couple of hours ago, and her kid was all excited about the Jaws the shark mask, and could he buy it on Amazon? Or she's going to get that for him.
That's great. Yeah, I find that the masks have become kind of a way of self-expression for people that can.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
And you have to wear one, but you have a lot of choices.
Yeah. When life gives you lemons.
Yeah.
Make lemonade.
Well, that's because it's airborne, and wearing the masks makes a big difference.
Exactly. I've just been told that someone else in our panel has a.
Well, I have a question here that I really need to answer from Elizabeth Reed on the chat. And she says, what's your advice for parents of adult children who regret the mistakes they made raising their children because they just didn't know any better? Well, I want to emphasize it's never too late to start. Okay, let's say you've got a 25-year-old recluse in the bedroom addicted to video games. It's not too late to start. And there's been some very good successes with the video game addicts, with car mechanics being the thing that they start doing. Give them some choices of things to try. You wean them off very slowly. And one guy that was one of these video game addicts, he's fixing trains now, and the railroad loves him. And this was the person I talked to just shortly before COVID started. So it's never too late to start, but you have to wean them slowly and give them choices and replace the video game with something else that could, become a job, hopefully. No, it's never too late to start. Okay, let's say I have a nonverbal who's never gone shopping. You can still slowly start doing it. There was a wonderful case of a guy who was in an institution and nonverbal, and a doctor named Jed Baker took him out of the hospital and taught him how to make coffee at the local gas station. And so his job was to be the coffee man. And this is an old guy, like maybe in his 40s. And every day he'd go to the gas station and make coffee, and he made really good coffee, and he'd clean the coffee pots really well. And that gave him a meaning in life. So that was somebody where it was much later in life. So it's never too late to do something about it. It's going to take a lot of effort because it's harder to do it with an adult than as a child, but you can still do things with them. I thought I'd better answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's really a powerful statement that, and I hope that it hit a chord with Miss Reed. I think that's great.
No, I don't know anything about, But...
And honestly, I don't know a lot about parenting. I'm not a parent, but I would say, Miss Reed, that if you are even thinking about how you were a parent to your child and really worrying over that, that means you're a good parent.
Oh, that's right. But there's too many, I'm seeing too many smart kids. Like, I'll give you some examples. A 16-year-old fully verbal who's never gone shopping.
Wow.
And the parents couldn't let go, just couldn't let go to run in the store and just buy something.
Wow. Yeah. You got to let if birds never let the baby birds out of the nest, we'd have a bunch of, little creatures flopping out of the sky and falling on our cars.
Well, that's the problem. I don't get locked into the labels because I'm a visual thinker, and I go, this kid looks like one of the programmers I saw at Google. You see, I'm in kind of the odd situation where I might visit a tech company, and of course, I haven't done it during COVID. I have done some tech company Zoom conferences, and then I'm at an autism meeting, and then I'm out at a meatpacking plant or a feedlot. So I'm going back and forth between these worlds. And when I went back and I listed a whole bunch of jobs they had, I figured out that about 20% of the really super skilled designers, drafting, and welding people working in the shops would be special ed kids today. And they need to be replaced. I just talked to the head of engineering in one of our big companies just the other day, and they're tearing their hair out to find people to fix stuff.
I believe we had in our panel of participants from Spark, Clary, did you put your hand up that you had a question? If you unmute yourself, dear, I'm sure that Dr. Grandin would love to hear it.
I didn't raise my hand or anything.
Okay.
It was me who raised my hand.
Oh. Let me check the chat here.
Well, there's some questions here in the chat. Let's go down through here's the question. What's a mathematical thinker see? They tend to see more patterns of things. And there's been some interesting observations with some of the scientists, like the engineer who designed the landing system for the Mars lander said he loved the photographs because now he got to see what he designed. You see, they tend to think of things more in graphs and mathematics rather than as photos. And then when they get these beautiful pictures back, they're just glued to them. There was another experiment that was done on the space station, and they had kind of looked at it more mathematically. And then when they finally got the pictures on a phone, they just couldn't stop looking at them. because it is the different way of seeing. Now I've got, as far as books go, I'm working on a book on visual thinking. Some might be interested in my book, Thinking in Pictures. And then my most general book on autism is The Way I See It. Whole lot of little short articles, you know, that just a lot of practical stuff in it. I've got a new book coming out in April. It's called The Outdoor Scientist. It's just things to get kids outside doing things. This is my kids' project book. It might be a good idea to turn it around. Calling All Minds. But The Outdoor Scientist is all outdoor stuff, where this has got, you know, a lot of indoor stuff in it too.
I may have to grab a copy of that myself, because I teach the science classes at Spark every Friday. Today we learned about the power of magnetism, which was really cool. And the beautiful thing about Zoom is you can link it up to YouTube videos that are very educational. And
there's great stuff there's really great stuff on YouTube. Something breaks, you can look it up on YouTube. And you know, kids I've got students in my livestock class, they have to do a scale drawing, that have never used a ruler, ever. I mean, they're growing up not doing any hands-on things. And so some places like Texas are really putting the skilled trades back in.
Yeah.
So I think I explained what the mathematical thinker sees, and then the whole thing about, was it autistic person or person with autism? A lot of people on the spectrum for autistic person. And then there's others, people argue over that.
Well, I could speak to that as someone who's been an advocate in the disability rights community. A lot of people say that it should always be people first.
Yeah, so, I know that.
So instead of saying autistic person, if you say a person with autism, you're putting that person before their disability in a sense.
Well, and I can understand that. And then there's a lot of people on the spectrum that like autistic. It's a sort of thing where, it's important, but it's not one of my top priorities. My top priorities are let's go and find good jobs for people that they're going to really like. Because some of the most fun stuff I ever did was in construction. Sitting around with the guys, we're trying to figure out how to design things, how to build things, how to make things work. That was stuff that I really liked. I'm not going to say those things aren't important, but what's more important to me is if I do these seminars and then somebody comes up to me 10 years later and says, well, my kid got a job and he loves it, or my kid bought a house.
Yeah.
That's the sort of stuff that really turns me on. As a visual thinker, visual thinking is not abstract. And I'm learning, as I'm working now on my book on visual thinking, working with a super good co-writer, Betsy. She's completely verbal. I show her a table. She hates tables. And I'm learning even more about the different kind of thinking. But what I love about Betsy, she takes all my stuff and she rearranges it in such wonderful ways.
That's great.
And you see, that's complementary minds. But I'm learning more and more about how things are different. But a visual thinker, also somebody who's worked 25 years in heavy construction. I was out on all these big meat companies. We're on big building projects. And the thing about construction, you've got to finish projects and make them work. And so I'm very much into outcomes. I don't want to see a smart kid, they could go get a job at Google, for example, end up in the basement playing video games, or someone like me who ought to be making parts for the Mars rover, playing video games in the basement all day.
Yeah.
You see that, but you see, I see it. You see, when you're a visual thinker, nothing's abstract.
Right.
It's all about, real outcomes.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody wants to see wasted potential.
No, that's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see that.
That was something that I saw an awful lot before Spark officially opened to the public. Was I'd ask friends with disabilities, "What'd you do today?" I said, "Oh, I went for a walk in Walmart." And I was like, "Oh, did you have to buy something?" They're like, "Oh, no, I didn't have any money." I was like, "So you went for a penniless walk in a store to pass the time?" And they're like, "Well, it was just something to do, I guess." And I found out that basically Medicaid is like, if you're an adult child with a disability and you live with your parents, you got to get them out of the house and in the community. But if they're not working at that time, what do? They're low income. It's not like they could just go to a restaurant or, go bowling or something every day. So they end up just kind of wandering aimlessly through the plazas. And I'm sure if we were more metropolitan, they'd be wandering in a mall, and so it was like, well, that just seems like wasted potential to me. They're just being.
And this is something that really bothers me. And I went to a really cool, I should have brought this down, workshop where they made really creative, like sculptures, and they were selling them online. And there were people that were nonverbal, partially verbal working there. They'd find some way where they could contribute to the art. And wow. That's the kind of thing I like. And they were selling it, making money at it.
That's fantastic.
That's the kind of stuff I like. And it was very creative things that they were making, where you're using people's abilities. But I'm very much into very real things. I want to answer a question here about meltdowns at school. How do you know when to stop pushing when there's meltdowns? First of all, you have to find out what causes it. The first big thing is sensory. Big number one. Noise, lights. There's now a lot of new LED lights that flicker. That drives a lot of people they just can't stand it because the whole place is flickering like a discotheque. That can be real difficult. It might be sensory. When they're tired, it's more likely to happen. If you have a nonverbal individual, you have to make sure he doesn't have a painful medical problem, like a stomach ache or a toothache. And then if they can't communicate, they're going to be frustrated. You got to give them a way to communicate. And then sometimes they'll do it to manipulate, but I'm going to look for the sensory problems and the problems with communication first. So you have to figure out what's causing it. That's what you got to.
There's a few questions that are similar in your Q&A section about when to push for accommodations and when to push or force your child to cope. That was one from
well, first of
Jen
all,
Durgan.
One of these, let's talk about what kind of accommodations you might need. There's some real simple ones like extra time on a test. I had to be tutored in every college math class I took. And back then it wasn't called accommodations. It was get tutoring before you flunk the course.
Oh,
and
wow.
The big mistake that people make on that is they don't ask for help when they fail the first quiz. I asked for help. I got it. And I don't know what you're going to call that now. I call it math tutoring. And when I got my master's, I had a graduate student tutor me. And I paid her by doing construction work, and her mother owned a really junky wino bar. I had to replace this rotten floor behind the bar. That's how I paid for statistics tutoring.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But you see that again. This is. I'm going to get more specific. Now, one of the things that's a problem is a student might have an aide in high school, and then they get to college and there's no aide. That's a bad situation. You got to work on weaning that aide off before they get to college.
Right.
I mean, and extra time on a test is some of the most common accommodation. And the other one that's often super important is lighting issues. And now we've got all these electronic weird lights, and some of them flicker and some of them don't. And I don't have the problem. But for people who have this problem with their eyes, and the problem's not in the back of the brain, it's where the problem is, that classroom's flashing on and off like a nightclub. And that's just not tolerable at all. That's something where they've got to get away from that. Now here, the Williams asking is, why do they wait until 11th or 12th grade to get them involved in hands-on learning? It's too late. No, we need to be starting that stuff a lot younger. I did wood shop in 5th grade. That would have been 11 years old. And I was doing sewing in 3rd grade, embroidery in 3rd grade. And when I was in 4th grade, I had a toy sewing machine that actually sewed.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Oh, the Singer's Sew Handy. You can actually look it up online. Singer's Sew Handy. Yeah.
Well, I have noticed you have a remarkable style about you, Dr. Grandin. Every photo I've seen on your website, you have the most awesome shirts I've ever seen.
Well, I've been collecting them over the years. I've gotten quite a few of them as gifts, and I've gotten them. I picked them up at different places around the world.
That's great. So I see here's another question here that's actually from my brother who's tuning in from Virginia. He said, I work very closely with programmers. Are there specific things I can do to create the best work environment in the future for any colleagues who may be on the spectrum?
The first thing is, don't give them vague instructions. They work better. Okay, there's a deadline, and this programming work has to get done on this platform by this time and do some specific outcome. That works better. And there's a scene in the HBO movie where my boss slammed the deodorant down and said, "You stink, use it." Okay, if you've got a programmer that's dirty, make them clean it up. There's no excuse for that. That's a non-negotiable. But some of these people need a quiet place to work. I'll never forget going to a tech company, and I went into a room that had 100 programmers in it. Big picture window on one side, all white walls. And they were like at bench desks, headphones on, total silence.
Oh, wow.
Total silence. And each one had something different on their computer. One had a graphics program up. Somebody else it was just obviously just code that was up on the computer. But they need specific tasks. Don't be vague. And then if they do, when I criticized welding on my first job in a very, very bad way, and I said it looked like pigeon doo-doo, plant engineer did the perfect right thing. He pulled me into his office and he explained that I had to apologize for that kind of rude language. He told me what I should do. Somebody, let's say you're at a project meeting and one of your programmers sits there and say, "Jim is the stupidest you know what." At a project meeting when you're trying to plan something, you pull them into the office quietly and say, "You just can't talk that way at a project meeting."
Right.
And then you tell them what they should do. But you explain to them what they should do in private. That's really important. Another tip is there's no verbal working memory. That programmer will not have any verbal working memory. If there's a task, something like unjamming the copier, and it has 5 steps, let them write it down. They do not remember verbal sequence. They need to write it down. Pilot's checklist. That's really important.
These sound like great tips for me too. I have a brain injury that I acquired when I was much younger from my brain surgeries and the tumor that I had. And I have some frontal lobe damage. And so just having a list of what's expected of me is always a lot better than like a vague, like, "Oh, you got this, right?" Having a very specific.
It's better to have, you see, even when I did my projects, I worked for every major meat company on jobs, and you've got to size up a job. You got new construction where you just got open ground, preferably pretty flat, and then you got the remodel jobs, and then you've got jobs where you're just fixing a few gates. But on a remodel job, let's say a pretty complicated remodel job, I want to get the drawings, and the first thing I have to do is verify what's called the as-built. That's a drawing of what is there. Is the as-built accurate, or is it a piece of junk that somebody just made it up so they could say they had an as-built? And about half the as-builts were pretty bad, actually. So I have to go out and verify all these measurements. And then I've got to get very clear boundaries of the project. What we're tearing out, what we're keeping. And then we walk the site, and I'm going, really? What's this manhole cover here? Can we build over that? Are you sure? What is under this manhole? Because it can be something that you can't build over. And then railroad right-of-ways, electrical equipment, you got distance away from it. Then I got to figure out exactly what they want the project to do. In other words, I don't want them designing it for me, but I want to know what I call all the site restrictions. And then I write them down. Then we go over them, and I go, okay, and then I'll give you just that. And then I'll see a big field on the other side of the chain link fence. I said, "Do you own that field?" They go, "Yes." Well, I think we ought to consider building a new plant addition out there on that field, rather than trying to remodel a building that really is a piece of junk. And if you spend $1 million on this building, it's a piece of junk.
Wow.
put it out in the field.
So it sounds like they're not always.
But as I'm talking about it now, I'm actually seeing the projects right now. I'm seeing them.
Oh, wow.
I'm seeing the projects.
It sounds like when you get on site, the info they give you isn't always as accurate.
Well, I get down to where I'm going to make it accurate, because the first thing, they give me the as-built, I go out there and do some check measurements. And if I do 5 check measurements, and that's within 6 inches of being right, I'm happy. But let's say I go out there and it's terrible, then I got to measure the whole site. Sometimes I have to throw the as-built away, it's so bad. And then figuring out what is the scope of the job. Where does the remodeling stop? And that's the boundaries of the project. So it's very clear. And it doesn't take that long to do that. And you're going to have that with programming too. You don't just say, well, develop new software. They got to develop some code that does some specific thing and get it done at a certain date. Be clear. Don't be vague.
Yeah, definitely.
And the work environment, some of these new lights are going to really bother some people. So the way to get around that is get over by the window. And you can't even buy the old-fashioned Edison type light bulbs anymore. Because you used to be able to just put one of those in the lamp and that would solve the problem.
Yeah.
But those old hot energy waster light bulbs do not flicker. If you can find some of those somewhere.
There's another question here from, it looks like my pastor signed on, and Pastor Kyle Siebert asked, might you comment a little bit about spirituality, perhaps how spirituality and religious communities might better include a diversity of thinking modalities?
Well, I would concentrate, especially in the autistic, is the teachings of being a good person, the golden rule. Teach the golden rule. One specific example at a time. You know, so I think about the 2 wallets I returned at 2 different airports. I would certainly, and I thank a lady. I left my purse one time at a newsstand. The lady sent it back to me. I sent her a check for $100, and it was intact, the money and the cards, everything. That you see now, when I think about the golden rule, that's the sort of stuff I think about. Treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, just very specific about being a good person. Now, when I think about the great unsolved things we think about, how about the Hubble Space Telescope deep space field? That's got an interesting background. The scientist that found that picture of thousands of galaxies pointed the Hubble at absolutely nothing, and NASA thought it was a stupid project. He pointed at nothing, and he saw what was out there. Thousands of galaxies. Well, I get spiritual when I look at the Hubble deep space field. Thousands, not stars, galaxies.
That's great.
That is a mind blower of a picture. Single most important photo that Hubble ever took, in terms of, you know, thinking about a lot of things. But we need to be emphasizing the good person thing. Like, I know you can get these bracelets to say, like, what would Jesus do? Well, what would Jesus do? He's not going to be a bully.
Right.
You know, when I was a little kid, there was a saying, we used to say in the 50s, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Just, right. Well, that's the kind of stuff you need to teach. It's real practical. And the other thing that's really good at, you know, churches is when COVID finally gets vaccinated out, it's a good place for kids to learn working skills, volunteer jobs. 10, 11 years old, they have a little volunteer job. Then they're working on a schedule outside the home. That's really, really important. And church is a perfect place where you can get kids learning those skills. Because the big problem I'm seeing people with autism graduating from college and then they can't get to work on time. They never learn any work skills.
Right.
And when it comes to interviews, for me, it was just showing off the work. Use your connections to get jobs. Half of all good jobs are backdoor for everybody.
Yeah.
Work your connections.
It's all about who you know.
In a good way.
Yeah, that's great. Sarah Grace Hedges, I think you've had your hand waving around for a while.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you ever get picked on in school?
Did I do what in school?
Ever get picked on?
Oh, yes, I got bullied horribly in high school. High school was horrible. And the only places I was not picked on where I had friends through shared interests. That was in high school. Friends through shared interests. It could be art. It could be band. I talked to one mom where her kid was doing just great at the local high school because he was in the band. The school play, maybe shop class. For me, it was electronics, horses, and model rockets. Friends who shared interests. It could be a sport. It could be a lot of different things.
I think that's great. That was a really good question, Sarah. Thank you.
No, I was bullied.
No problem.
Being a teenager, that was the worst part of my life. Just the worst part of my life.
Yeah, children can be cruel. And I think nowadays with the technology that they have at their disposal, they can say things that they would never have the courage to say to one's face that are just so just cut the person apart in such a way.
It's awful things where teenagers bullied a girl and then she climbed up some old tower and jumped off and committed suicide.
Yeah.
Because they bullied her on social media. Just horrible.
Well, I wonder during those formative years of yours, if you had something like a Spark Community Center of your own, a place where you could gather with like-minded people and feel safe and kind of supported and
well, it would be, you need to have refuges away from bullies, you see, but now I'm visualizing, well, what if I had an iPhone in my pocket when I was in high school and they'd be texting me all kinds of horrible names like tape recorder, that's one of the things they used to call me, and bones because I was skinny.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Workhorse, tape recorder, and bones. That's what they called me. And they'd be texting that to me. I guess the one takeaway, writing, I was away from that stuff.
I guess the one takeaway I would come away with from that is how many of those bullies have multiple books and a movie. I think that they're probably feeling very, very guilty about how they treated you back then.
And you know what? None of those bullies have come out of the woodwork and have ever communicated with me. I've had a lot of other people from elementary school, high school, and college that track me down. None of the bullies have ever apologized.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Me too.
Me too.
Here's a question I think of from Jason. Do you think in circumstances where being diagnosed autistic can hurt more than help? I think in some situations on the job front, yes, especially on the fully verbal end of the spectrum, because there's not enough expectations for just learning, daily living skills. Now, where a diagnosis can help a lot is with relationships, teenagers and above. There's been adults diagnosed later in life, and it helped with their marriages and their relationships. That's where it can be helpful. But I'm saying too many smart kids sort of becoming their label. Yeah, there's problems like I can't multitask. I'll tell you one job I could not do. Here's be the worst job. A waitress, and I have to, I can't write down what the people ordered. I have to remember all the orders for 8 people, and then I got to put plates on my arm like that. No way. No way. I'd be fired the first night. That's a job I can't do. And take out window at a busy McDonald's be second worst. But there's other jobs like an electronics store or an office supply store. I'd be fine there. But multitasking is a problem, and remembering long strings of verbal information. Now, one of the things that helped me with animals is being a visual thinker. Animals don't think in words. They live in a sensory-based world. So it's obvious to me to look at what cattle were seeing when they went through a chute and they coat on a fence. They see a coat on a fence, they balk at it.
That actually ties in.
I have one question, John. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, Hava. Yeah.
Thanks. I love all the analogies and talking about different kinds of thinkers that you've talked about. And I really appreciate that you were really honest with us about how hard it can be to find friends, especially when you're younger and a teenager, or even when you're a young 20s. And
worst part of my life was teen years. Worst part of my life. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people share that.
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of people want to be teenagers again. But,
no.
Never.
Yeah.
And I had one mom say their cute 10-year-old turned into a different person when he became a teenager, and it wasn't good.
Oh.
Yeah. As a mom, I might be able to agree with that a little bit. But I'm a little bit curious about social connections, and we've sort of talked a little bit about this tonight. As COVID has been really hard for people, and you talked about how it was really important to have a good routine. And for a lot of our friends here, what part of our routine is being able to get together on Friday nights and come together and have a social activity. And before COVID, we all used to get together in person and share a meal and do something fun.
Well, now it's online, and it's hard. I just read an awful article in the Wall Street Journal just today at lunchtime that teenage boys that are with nothing to do during COVID are going out and carjacking. That means taking cars away from people with a weapon. I just read that. And some police association was saying, we got to get these kids back in school. That's today's Wall Street Journal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sad that that's the first thing they would run to, and not like, hey, let's go find a hobby like drawing or writing.
But that's really awful.
Yeah.
Or go to the community center.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
It's going to be closed. But the thing is, no, but that was just dreadful. I was just shocked when I read that. That's today's Wall Street Journal.
Well, then what would you recommend for everybody here? Not that anybody here is going to be a carjacker, but what would you recommend for everybody for advice for how we stay connected and how we feel our purpose even when we can't get out and
well,
be
I
with
think
each other?
one of the things that some people are doing is forming quarantine pods where you've got certain people you socialize with, and then we have the issue of us old folks in the house, which are going to be vaccinated real soon. And I think that's going to make things a whole lot easier because we're the ones who die from COVID. I had to be extremely careful. 78% of the COVID deaths in Colorado were over 70. You know, the figures are very, very clear on that. And I have certain people I've socialized with, do it carefully. When I get back from this trip I'm going to be going on, I'm going to stay away from some people for a week. But form some groups, and there's a little nursery school right across the street from where I live, and it's so good to see the little kids out there playing. And some parents are afraid to get that kid back in nursery school. I'm going to say, if you don't have a senior in the house, get them back. And when the senior's vaccinated, then, and the shots have taken effect, you have to wait for the shots to take effect. That's 2 to 3 weeks. It's 2 weeks after the second. Well, you have some protection on the first vaccine, and it's 2 weeks after the second one, but then the Johnson & Johnson is probably about 3 weeks after you've had it. That's the one shot. It's just so bad. That's what we need to be doing. And if someone brought up here that you have to have an algebra to get out of high school, well, I managed to get out of algebra. I did terrible in high school, and I got into college on probation. And thank goodness in '67, it was statistics mainly that I studied in math class. And with a lot of tutoring, I could do it. Never got a chance to try geometry. Of the skilled trades things I talk about, you need arithmetic the way it was taught in the 50s and 60s up through 6th grade. The old-fashioned arithmetic, area of a circle, percents, fractions. That stuff I knew how to do. And this algebra barrier is screening a lot of kids out. You don't need algebra for car mechanics, but you do need the old-fashioned arithmetic up through 6th grade, which I could do.
I think they should make it a class like just how to balance a checkbook.
Well, they don't know how to do that.
Yeah, there's so many people.
Yeah, they don't know how to do that basic stuff.
Yeah.
I think I looked at some of the Common Core math. I thought it was kind of crazy. I actually liked the Common Core English stuff, but some of the math you're making something like how much road a contractor can build in a year into an algebra problem. I'm going, really? Need algebra to figure out how much, if he can build 8 miles of road a day, how much he can build in a year. He's going to work 5 days a week, probably 8-hour shifts. You can do that with arithmetic.
That's great.
But I think we got to really think about that, because we've got stuff breaking right now in our plants, stuff that should not break. I mean, I talk to people. I'm obviously not going to tell you which plant it is, but stuff breaking that shouldn't break. That's happened right now.
So I have a friend, someone who works with me as an aide, because I'm legally blind, and he helps out with stuff around the house. And he actually has autism himself, and has been diagnosed with autism himself, and faced bullying in the high school years. And I see him only for just what an amazing person he is and what an amazing help he is. But he said, can you ask her, how she got past all that bullying and all that negativity? How did she heal from that?
The only thing that saved me was the friends who shared interests. Well, I had a roommate that we rode horses together. I had, then my science teacher came, near the end of my time at school. But I had the Model Rocket Club. None of the bullies were in the Model Rocket Club. These were places that were refuges away from teasing.
Good.
Friends who shared interests. And then there's some kids where they're, regular high school is just terrible. You might homeschool them, but I want to get them in the workforce just as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
exactly.
I really do.
And I see
some job that doesn't have too much multitasking.
Right. And I see kind of a tie-in to the question that my friend had about how do you heal from that. M asked, when you're faced with adversity, how do you stay resilient? I think that's a beautiful question.
You have to not take your eyes off the goal.
Right.
When I was in getting my master's, somebody wrote on the wall of the art building, obstacles are those terrible things you see when you take your eyes off the goal. Now, I now know that Henry Ford wrote that. But of course, back in the 70s, I wouldn't have any way of knowing that. You have to sort of get a higher goal, and you got to keep your eyes on the goal, and get some friends who shared interests, so that you got some time away from this. And then what do you do about hope the jerks aren't texting you?
Yeah.
You see, because we got that issue now. I'd start asking you, what are you good at doing? We've got to find, a path for you.
Yes, definitely.
And different people will be good at different things.
Well, I always thought
you do things that give your life some meaning. And there's a thing called activation therapy for depression. They're using this a lot in developing countries where there's no services. Okay, let's say this person likes cats. Well, then she could work at the cat shelter. Or somebody likes gardening. Well, then you get them making a garden. Get them in a garden club. You get them doing activities that they are interested in. Now, some individuals don't know what they're interested in, so then you got to get them to try things. They call it activation therapy.
Well, I guess we're doing that at Spark then, because we've had plenty of people like, oh, I'm cool just sitting here and watching the TV that you guys have. And I'm like, yeah, but we're doing a class right now. Why don't you join us? Why don't you give it a try?
Well, that's right.
Yeah, and I think that it pulls them out of their shell and makes them feel more included. Because sometimes I think people just hold back because they're like, oh, maybe I wouldn't be welcomed in the class or welcomed in the activity. But we want everyone to know that everyone's welcome.
Well, we got to get people out doing things. And we also got to work on finding just a lot more things in the neighborhood. Let's get kids involved in hand-on things. I've got my new project now for the Minecraft addicts. Minecraft blocks. I learned this about 10 years ago from a mom who had got 2x4s cut up and had the kids stand and paint them and make Minecraft blocks. Now, you can make jumbo Minecraft blocks, and you can make them out of Amazon boxes. Then you take
That's a great idea.
And you paint them. Now, they come in different numbered sizes. Numbered. Yeah. And, okay, you math kids, you can have fun with that. But you could collect those and just tape them shut and paint them in the Minecraft colors. And that's something you could just do in the neighborhood and the cardboard's free.
Just don't make any life-size creepers. Those would scare people.
Yeah,
those are the monsters in the game that just go boom.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to make anything that goes boom. I was thinking it's more. But one autistic kid is where the mom did the thing with cutting the 2x4s up and having the kids paint them. He became the sensation in the neighborhood. He had Minecraft blocks in his driveway.
That's great.
Wow.
And okay, how about getting a retired mechanic to teach some of the kids, teenagers, small engine repair? See if they like engines. Broken lawnmowers, they get the right price. They're free. They're free. Let's start working on things in the neighborhood.
Yep.
That's that we could do to get kids. I'm just horrified about this teenage boys carjacking. Ugh.
Yeah, that's.
I just was horrified, and I read that today.
That's an end to a road.
Well, I have had another mom tell me that her kid's a new kid now. He's at least back doing some hybrid classes and getting back in school. She said it really turned him around.
That's good.
And her kid's elementary school.
Well, when you started getting involved in advocacy, I mean, I'm sure that this all just kind of unfolded on its own as you started speaking your mind and speaking openly about what you thought. People were like, wow, this lady knows what she's talking about. We should listen to her. And you gained more and more acclaim and fame that is well earned because you have such wisdom to share. And you kind of, I think, from there got into the advocacy for people with autism and people with disabilities. I feel you're
right. And I mean, I'm always going to be a scientist first, and I'm not going to give up teaching my class, doing some design work and stuff, because I think it's important that I have a real job. I get concerned when 8-year-olds walk up to me. All they want to do is talk about their autism, not about a project or something they've done but just about autism. They get too much into it.
Right.
And I'm very much into figuring out how can we get results. What I was pleased when I went to a maker fair that the big hit of the maker fair wasn't the electronics, it was washing machine boxes. And these like 4th and 5th graders, they take hacksaw blades and tape up one end for a handle. And even little kids can cut that heavy cardboard with that. And they were having a great time. That's why I did my Calling All Minds book. There's nothing expensive in here.
Awesome.
Things that you can make out of a Pringles can or just cardboard cloth, a parachute, a scarf, and some string. And then to make it open good, you make a thing I invented out of coat hangers.
Yeah, I may have to plead with you for the honor of a signed copy of one of your books for our center.
Okay. I could probably do that, but it's thinking out. We're going to have to start doing a lot more neighborhood things too.
I agree.
And then I'll think of something like a kind of. Parents don't think about their friend that owns a florist shop that might be a good place for their kid to work in. And they go, oh, I hadn't thought of that, because I'll say, who do you know that owns a store? And they'll go, oh, I got a friend who owns a florist shop. And I said, why don't you have your kid work there?
Yeah.
And they'll go, I haven't thought of it. The worst one was two mom and a dad, and their kid, about 8 years old, was brilliant in math. And mom and dad had never thought to introduce the child to programming. And I brought that up, so why don't you teach your kid programming? And they go, what a great idea. We hadn't thought of that. See, they're getting too much into the medical model. 2 computer programmers didn't think to teach their little math genius programming. I am serious. I've had two cases of this. One about 10 years ago and one right before COVID.
That just seems like a no-brainer to me. Yeah.
Well, it is a no-brainer, but this happened.
Yeah, that's why we never
didn't think to teach a kid who's good at math programming. How are you going to know if he likes programming if you don't try it? I tried programming. I couldn't do it. But I tried it. You see, you got to expose kids to enough stuff so they can find out what they might like to do.
Absolutely.
And we need to be exposing them young.
Well, I just wonder...
John, do you have any more questions? I was just wondering if we should ask the audience if they wanted to raise hands.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of put it out to the panel that we have of participants. If you guys have any questions on your mind, or just if you want to thank Dr. Grandin in your own words, you know, let us know and we'll give you a shout.
And then I'll answer Jen Durgan's question. She says,
Yes.
the national movements, you know, of the reform special education. I think that when I started out my cattle stuff, I did it one little project at a time, and then I wrote about it. Well, do something really innovative in school, and then write about it, how you did it. And I put out real practical how-to articles on cattle handling, and you could use the same model. And there's a lot of innovative teachers out there, and not enough where it gets written up explaining what they did to work with, you know, different kinds of kids. More of a bottom-up approach. You do something really innovative in special ed, write about it, put it up online, spread it all around, like the TED, you know, the TED Talks that go, ideas worth spreading.
Oh, I love TED Talks.
Is one of their slogans. And we need, there's a, sometimes the more neighborhood bottom-up approach works better, and that's the approach I used. And then I had big breakthroughs. So I got major customers like McDonald's, and we could really get some stuff done. But in the beginning, I just, you know, one little project at a time, I wrote it up. Diagrams of it, pictures of it, why it worked, just practical stuff. Because the problem is some of the top-down stuff is too vague, too abstract. And I'm realizing now just how differently I think. I think in specific examples. Here's a big example of something we do at school that doesn't work. Here's something that does work. For teaching reading, I couldn't read when I was 8 years old. Sight words didn't work for me. Some mother taught me with phonics. So try different methods. Another kid is going to be a sight word learner. Then use the sight words. People get way too hung up on just one method to teach something.
I think Melissa has a question tonight. Melissa, did you want to get one in there?
I did. Thank you very much. So I was doing some research after finding out about tonight, and it looks like you have ties to New Hampshire.
Yes, I did. I went to college at Franklin Pierce College, and I went to Hampshire Country School. So I was in New Hampshire for 8 years.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Wow.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think there's a question in the audience from Valerie. Valerie, I'm going to let you speak by promoting you to a panelist. Let's see. So let's see, Valerie, did you manage to get?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, Dr. Grandin. Thank you so much Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. You know, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the movie Music by Sia. And I wonder if you have seen the movie or have heard about.
What's the name of the movie? I'm going to.
It's Music.
It's a musical, or?
It is a musical. It was just recently made, and there is a big
and what is the name of it? I'm going to have to research this because I'm not aware of it.
So the movie's name is Music, and it was written and directed by a pop star named Sia, S-I-A.
The name of the movie is Music, and the director was Sia. I'm going to have to look this up.
And the lead character is nonverbal and has autism, and she is played by Maddie Ziegler, who does not have autism. And there's a huge outcry about casting Maddie Ziegler as somebody with nonverbal.
Okay, so the problem is what they're upset about is that it should have been somebody on the spectrum being the part or the content of the movie.
Correct. Yes.
Which is the problem, the content of the movie or the?
There's a double whammy here because first of all, it's having somebody without autism portray. Also, there's a scene where the lead character is having a complete meltdown with a lot of stress and a lot of sensory overload, and so her caregiver uses a gentle restraint with her, and because she's out and she's really in danger of hurting herself or others, and there's a huge backlash against the use of restraint in this movie, and for me it was difficult to see how else somebody would handle a meltdown like this.
Well, the best thing to do is just get them in a quiet place and let it eventually subside, or then try to figure out what's triggering it and not have another meltdown. Sensory is a big cause of meltdowns.
And so did you have any sort of backlash when Claire Danes played you in your wonderful movie?
Well, I hope that she did a really good job, and she portrayed it really accurately. And that was 10 years ago.
And I think maybe Hollywood has changed, or public.
Well, I think it's changed some, and I think if we did the movie today, then we'd get someone who was autistic to play the part. The movie showed. Let's see, it would be 11 years ago now, but then all the planning for the movie was 2 years prior to that, so that's 13 years ago. Yeah, I think it has changed. But the thing is, the movie, they didn't show any, the producer of my movie, Emily Gerson Sains, is the mother of an autistic child, a fairly severe autistic child. And she wanted to have it done right. And I thought they did a really good job with that. No, I'm not a fan of using restraints. I'm going to have to research this movie. I was not aware of it.
Great. I would love to hear what you think. After you do see it, I would love to hear
see, the whole thing with restraints, I mean, there's been people killed with restraints.
Yes, and there, as you will see in the movie, these are times of very, very high stress, and it's a very gentle, safe restraint. I've got my master's in education 25 years ago, and I remember taking safe restraint classes because the teachers needed to. It was a requirement to get our master's degree because if in case we had to help hold down or calm down a student, we would know how to not to hurt them and how to help them through that trauma. And it's kind of
the other thing is on this movie is how was it sympathetically portrayed? I mean, how was it, what was the overall tone of it?
Well, I thought that it gives a rare glimpse and a peek. It's very artistically done and done through song, and it gives a very artistic and close peek at something that people don't like to look at. And people don't like to see the meltdowns. They don't like to see adults having meltdowns.
Well, the other thing that I think is people don't want to accept that some of the nonverbal individuals do have a good brain inside. So I've been carefully collecting all the books where it's documented. Like Tito, I've met. This one right here, it's coming out this summer, extensive talks with mom. And I suggested you put more documentation in it, that it's totally independent typing. Because there are some that type completely independently without being touched. And you also must not touch the thing they type on. I don't care if it's an iPad, a computer keyboard, a piece of cardboard with the alphabet on it. Cannot touch the thing they type on either. They have to be completely independent. Because I have seen a parent take a letterboard that they typed on. Let's pretend this piece of paper was a letterboard. And the mom's moving it like this. That's cueing. But there are people, I've got 4 that have books that are absolutely independent. And I think people have a hard idea imagining that some of these nonverbal individuals actually have a brain inside them.
And I think that
they don't want it. I think they don't want to admit that.
I think that's the beauty of this movie comes in, and people need to see that, and they need to kind of break through it. And I think it's unfortunate the backlash that this group of advocates has caused, because I think it's a portrait that people need to see to help understand. And I think it's done in a beautiful way. So I'm very much.
I'm going to have to go look. I was not aware of the movie until right now, so I have to go and research that movie. I'll be looking at at least all the trailers and everything of it, and reviews and things.
I hate to do this.
You get into the issue of the the anti-ABA stuff. You see, the way I approach things. I'm a problem solver. And I'm finding that spending so many years in an industry where I build things, it changes. Starting to sneeze. It changes how I approach problem solving. I want to, see good outcomes for people. I want to see a nonverbal person living somewhere, doing their typing and having a good life. That's the way I look at things.
Dr. Grandin, we have a couple more people in the audience. I just want to be thoughtful about time here
Well,
tonight.
yeah, I'm getting to the point where it's 6 o'clock my time. I'm going to have to go. I've got another conference, and I've got to get something to eat.
Do we have just a couple more minutes?
Yeah, you have a couple more minutes.
Quick questions.
I am going to look this movie up, and
I'm wondering if we could move. Here, I can do that.
Oh.
Ann Donaldson, I think you're
Okay.
able to ask your question.
Hello, Dr. Grandin.
Okay.
It's an honor to speak with you. I'm a special education teacher, and what I'm running into is students are spending a lot of time stimming, and you're not able to get beyond that into the actual content of the lesson. What would you recommend?
Well, let's find. Some kids need stimming breaks. I was allowed to stim after lunch in my room,
Okay.
spin things. But then try to have some times where they don't do it, so you can work with them. See, the problem is if I stimmed all day, I wouldn't have learned anything at all.
Yes.
So it kind of shuts your brain off. It shuts it completely off, and they can have some stimming breaks, and also try to get them to do things.
Okay.
Now,
yes,
is this a verbal kid or nonverbal or partially verbal or?
I've experienced it with both, but mostly nonverbal students. I will definitely give them more stimming breaks. But I see they are bright kids. They can read usually, because they follow comprehension. But the stimming gets so much in the way.
Well, they can have stimming breaks, but they also need some time where they obviously are not stimming. The other thing is, are these kids getting enough exercise? Because vigorous exercise helps reduce some of that, helps calm down the nervous system.
Okay, great. That's excellent.
And
Thank you.
That's a real simple thing that you can do.
Okay.
And the other thing is the lighting. Some of these new lights flicker.
It's true. So true.
Thank you for that question. I want to see if we can get just a couple more people in here. I'm not sure who this is. I think this is maybe Linda Lindheim J.
Yeah. Hi. I just had a question for you, and thank you so much for all your wonderful work. You said that you can tell when someone walks into a dining room if they're autistic, and I just wondered, how do you know this? Is it their body language?
It's just a combination of things. I've been around for a long time. I can tell, and if they open their mouth, I can instantly tell.
What, can you be specific on how?
Well, there's some things I just, how they're dressed.
How they dressed?
That's one thing. And some you can't tell, but some you can.
And
well, I'm kind of clumsy the way I walk, because I have a little balance problem. That sometimes shows up. The other thing I can tell, like if I shake hands with them, they'll be sweaty. It's autonomic nervous system arousal. No, they and then you go somewhere else and the people look different. That's all.
Is it how they dress that their clothes don't match or something, or what?
Well, and they also their way they walk. There's I have a clumsiness. And I walk.
Okay, thank you so much.
But and then people that work there, I've talked to them. There's people that work there. We've discussed it. They know they're on the spectrum, but they avoid the label because they don't want to be held back. They don't want to be perceived as being handicapped.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually actively avoid the labels in Silicon Valley.
Thank you for that question too. I want to jump to, I think, our last hand up. It says Noble, and and I'm not sure who that is.
Yep.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Grandin. Thank you so much for doing this and for all that you've done. I rewatched the movie for I think the third time last night, and I was thinking about the squeeze machine, and we have some things now like weighted blankets and this and that, a lot of different things to help people with self-soothing. But I was just wondering, was that anything that was ever manufactured in any way, the squeeze machine, or did you ever build them?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the company called the Therafin Corporation in Illinois. Therafin, it's Therafin,
Therafin, yeah.
Therafin Corporation, they make it. They've been making it for years. It is expensive, and things like weighted blankets and weighted vests can be, cheap, and for some people, really helpful. Now, the thing I want to emphasize is the weighted blanket doesn't work for everybody. It works for some people, but not for everybody.
Did you ever build a squeeze machine for anyone else back in the day when you made that one?
Yeah, I made one or two others.
Yeah, cool.
And the other thing that's important with the squeeze machine is I could control it.
Right.
That's important. This gets back to, if you're working with kids, sometimes they can learn to tolerate a loud noise of a vacuum cleaner or a hairdryer if the child can turn it on and off, where they control it. That's key. They have to control it. And that can sometimes work.
Did you ever think of patenting that, Dr. Grandin?
Well, actually, Mr. Carlock, my science teacher, didn't think I could patent it because it was a new use for a cattle squeeze chute. And they've changed patent law over the years. In fact, I actually cover it in here, is they've broadened the things that could be patented.
Right.
I think today, yes, I could have patented it. But back then, but basically copied a cattle squeeze chute. That'd be like using a wheelbarrow for a planter. I would not be able to patent that.
Right, right.
And because I actually asked about that, and that's why it never got patented. Today, it would have had some patents. Now, I've gone on to Google Patents, and there's all kinds of references to me on anything with pressure. There's probably 100 patents.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's really kind of wild. And for some individuals, deep pressure is really, really calming. But it doesn't work for everybody. I want to really emphasize that. These sensory issues are extremely variable. One person's going to have a problem with the lighting. The other person is not going to have problems with the lighting. It's super, super variable.
I think I've got one more question here that I could read. It's from Liz. And Liz says, I have a 4-year-old nonverbal nephew. He's in England and I'm in Ireland. I'm a veterinary surgeon and would like to introduce him to my life in the hope that some part of it might strike a chord with him. Is this naive?
And how old is the kid?
He's a 4-year-old.
Well, I would just do simple things like, exams and things like that for a 4-year-old. Now, a kid's 11 or 12 years old. I mean, I don't think I'm going to introduce a 4-year-old to surgery. Probably no. But you can, introduce them the idea of, take care of the dog's health and vaccinations and exams and gradually get them interested. If a little older kid, get them involved in it. There's nothing at a vet clinic that's really dangerous. It isn't like a construction site. We've got heavy equipment. I couldn't have a 4-year-old there. But the thing is, I'd have to be careful about what dogs came in there because I wouldn't want the kid to get bitten. Take some reasonable precautions. But kids need to get exposed to stuff, and maybe he'll be fascinated watching some surgery. But I'd introduce that gradually if you decide to do that.
Well, I just want to take the time to personally thank you, Dr. Grandin, for spending an amazing 2 hours with us of asking all of our questions and taking the time to answer them all. And you have such amazing insights. And I hope, and I know there will be a day when this comes, that you can travel again. And when you can, I hope you may make your way back to
well, I got
Hampshire and visit us at Spark Community Center.
Live speaking engagements got canceled or postponed or made virtual. But I've got one in March that's they decided to do it live. I'm going. I already bought the ticket. I can't believe I bought a plane ticket. Something I haven't done in a year. Wow. And because the vaccines will have had a chance to work by that time, and I'm going.
Good.
And then I have another trip in April, and that's it. Everything else is virtual.
Well, and if you ever find yourself up in our neck of the woods in New Hampshire once more, we'd love for you to drop by Spark Community Center and give us a visit. That'd be fantastic.
Okay, well, that's just great. And I like talking to everybody. And what we've got to do is we have to find practical solutions for problems. Like your Spark Community Center model, write about it. Write about it.
Yep.
Write about it in a lot of different things, blogs, disability literature, because you're doing something that's really constructive and practical, and explain how you do it. So you can start this in some other community. So grassroots doing it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm finding that my approach to things, since I am a visual thinker, also somebody who comes out of a trades, livestock, construction, it's all about making something real. It's not abstract. So let's say other people start similar sparks, and it's sort of like what TED did. You have the TED Talk, and then they have the TEDx.
Yep.
And those are grassroots talks, and they mark them as TEDx, and they let local people do that, and they have to follow some standards, but get other people in other places, and put out the how to do it. I've had people say to me, "Why do you give away all your intellectual property?" I said, "I have more consulting and stuff I know what to do with." Just tell people how to do it. Write about it, and then write about it in the professional, or education journals and things like that.
Well, it's funny. When I was in the keynote speaking, prime of my time in advocacy, I once, when I was creating Spark, said, "Oh, I'm creating a community center where people can do art and music and cooking and gardening, and everyone will be valued for their spark, and I want that to be something that replaces this like worn out model of just dragging them through the shopping plazas."
Well, I think just dragging the shopping plazas is stupid. That's not. Some of these guys need to be working.
Yeah.
And maybe others they don't. And I'm very much into practical things that work, that make a positive change. Yeah. You see, when you think verbally, there's a lot of abstract theory. I'm not going to go into examples because it gets too controversial. So it's abstract theory. But when they apply that theory down on the ground where everybody is, it does not work. There's been some bad situations with that. We've got to make sure we do stuff that works. And the stuff I did, well, I had the big breakthrough with, where I got to implement the McDonald's audits. And boy, we went through all the big, large meat plants and we just cleaned them up. But I also didn't make them do expensive, stupid things.
Right.
We had to get rid of 3 plant managers out of 75 suppliers. We had to do a lot of repairs, a lot of training, fix the floors and some things like this. And they were never asked to do something crazy and expensive. And the other thing is I absolutely did not profit from that. This is where, yes, and I had a piece of equipment to sell. I did not shove it down anybody's throat. We had 75 suppliers. Only 3 had to buy something expensive. It's amazing what a little maintenance and a little management and getting rid of 3 plant managers did. It's the management. It's the people that are running things. And I had a very, very simple way to evaluate them with outcome measures. Very, very simple. And it was amazing. And you have a big buyer. I had the power of a big buyer. For about 5 years, I had the power. When I was going in these places, like we got 2 of them right here. We made them fix some stuff. One of them had one broken stuff. We made them fix it. And this I did this 20 years ago. It was back in 1999, 20 years ago. But the reason why the industry didn't revolt is they were never asked to do something it was always totally practical. And we took some shabby old dumps and we made them work without spending a fortune. And maintenance of equipment and repairs, that was major. I'd go in there, you get broken, like on my center track, we're saying, and half my clients would wreck it. I said, you got busted hydraulic side adjusters. You're going to have to fix those. They better be fixed the next time they come in. But that's something simple. And sometimes we get too much abstract theory. And when we go down on the ground with it, it doesn't work. And I'm going to keep the examples out of it because they get too controversial. But you've got to, all I can say is you got to get down on the ground and find out when you activate what is happening down on the ground. Make sure you don't actually accidentally do something destructive.
Right. Well, that was one thing I wanted to make sure of with Spark, is that we didn't become a segregated center, that we became a center that was really for the whole community, but had a special place in its heart for providing a judgment-free zone where people with disabilities could excel.
Well, that's good. And then what you need to do is write about what you do. And this is exactly what I did with the cattle stuff. I remember tiny projects when I first started, and then I wrote about them in the magazine.
Cool.
And I wrote exactly how to build them. It was a lot of how-to articles. How do we actually do stuff? And sometimes the grassroots approach works better than changing attitudes. And that's the, you know, and I look back on the things I've done. I've been in the livestock industry for 50 years now. And writing was a really important part of my career. Yes, I was out on construction sites. I stayed in grubby old motels before they had Holiday Inn Expresses and Hamptons and some of those nicer mid-priced hotels, which now, all the construction people stay at those nice hotels now. We stayed at little junky things. And because it was mainly 70s, 80s, and early 90s that I was really doing this.
Yeah.
But I also was writing for our farm magazines, our state cattle magazines, and the meat trade magazines, and those articles. I'm still doing them. I still write them every month.
Well, I don't know if you can see the chat screen, but it's been blowing up with thanks to you for an amazing evening and an amazing talk. And I definitely second all those thank yous. So thank you, Dr. Grandin.
Well, thank you very much. And I think I'm going to sign off now. And I'm going to eat because I've got a 6:30. I've got 30 minutes to get something to eat now before I get another call I'm going to be on. You know, but keep up the good work. Spark Community Center. You know, keep up your good work. And
yes, absolutely.
Also write about it. Put videos up that you put up where people can access it easily on, you know, how to do things.
Definitely.
Thing to do.
That's great advice. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Can we all unmute the sign? Thank you.
Thank you. You're a great lesson.
I'm going to sign off. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Grandin.
Bye. Thank you, John.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.